If you would like to have full support from programming expert via Telegram group and group coaching, check the description below. Hi everyone, my name is Giovanna Proença, and today we're gonna work with 18 essential problems to finally understand variables. So if you want full support from our programming experts, check the description below, alright? And there you can have access, you can have support via Telegram, group coaching, and also access to our membership, alright? These exercises here were made by us, okay? So you can finally understand how to manipulate variables, how it works, okay? And this is one of the exercises that we have in our membership, okay? So let's start working with the first problem. So problem 1, create a variable, store your name in that variable and print the variable. So in here, variable, we can think like math, alright? Basically, we're gonna give a name to this variable and we can work with this variable during our problem, okay? Normally we store things in variables. So let's create a variable here. I'm gonna give the word name to this variable, okay? So in the left side, I'm giving the name of the variable. I put the equals here to say that I want to store a value in this variable, and in the right part I put the value, okay? In this case, I want to store my name, so I'm gonna put here Giovanna. Alright, so here we created a variable called name and we stored my name in that variable. So we're doing name equals to Giovanna, okay? To print the variable, what we have to do? We have to use the function print, and we're going to put here the name variable. Alright, so let's run with the debugger. I'm gonna put a breakpoint in here, and basically what the debugger does, the debugger will help us to see exactly what the computer is reading when we are working with coding. Alright, so for example, if I put a breakpoint here, this red dot, and I click in this part, run and debug, we're going to select Python file, and we're gonna start running our code this way, okay? So far we are on line 1. Like we can see in here, we are in the yellow line, all right? So we did not read the yellow line so far, okay? We're gonna read in the next part. So far we have no variables in our debugger, so our code has no variables. Once I click in this button, now we read the line 1, and we can see here that we have a variable called name, and the value is Giovanna. And now if we print name, it's going to appear here in our terminal, the word name. Okay, it didn't appear, but I can make it appear. For example, if we run here now, Python problems.py, I'm gonna see here in the terminal, Giovanna, okay? What if I wanna put a different name, for example, Leo? If I run with the debugger again, run and debug, we're going to check here that right now, in our first line, we don't have anything. Once I click in this button, now we have a variable called name that stores the value Leo, and once we print name, it will print here Leo in the terminal, okay? That's it. So this is for the first problem. Now let's go to the second one. So let me remove what we did. The next one is ask user for his name, print only the name, okay? So for this part, we're going to learn how to use the input function, okay? So before we continue, let's see this animation about input function. Basically, the function input allows us to ask questions to the user, and the answer that the user typed in, we can store in a variable. For example, if we want to ask the name of the user, we can do username equals to input, what's your name? And it will be prompt in the terminal. The user can write his name. If the user types in Giovanna, the variable username will store Giovanna. Since the answer is stored in a variable, we can use this answer in our code. So now that we saw how input function works, let's start applying in here, okay? So the idea of the exercise will be pretty much the same as the problem 1, but instead of us putting the name in the code, we're gonna ask the user for the name, okay? So again, let's create a variable here called name equals, and we're gonna assign a value to this variable. To assign a value to this variable, we're gonna use the input function, okay? I'm gonna use here input, and then we need to print name, the variable. It's exactly the same, all right? So let's see what happens. If I run here using the debugger again, let me put the breakpoint on line 1. If I run here using the debugger again, we're gonna see that name is equals to input, right? input is expecting us to give a value. So right now we have anything. Once I click here in this arrow, the code will expect us to write something. So for example, here in the terminal, I'm gonna put my name, Giovanna, okay? And once I click enter, now Giovanna, that is the word that I put in the terminal, appears here as the value for the variable name, okay? So once we click here to print, it will print Giovanna again, okay? So let's run with something different. So if I type in another name, for example, let me shrink this part, okay? So right now again we have our variable name equals to input, and if I run here to read this line, we're expecting to receive a message. So in here, if I put the word Leo again, the name Leo again, and I click enter, now we have a variable called name and we're storing Leo. That it's exactly what we pass in the terminal. Okay, so the input function, basically what it does, we're going to get the value that the user put in the terminal and store in our code. Okay, and then if we print, we're gonna print Leo. Alright, we have something different, something extra that this input function can receive. We can display a message so the user can know what we have to type in the terminal. So for example, I have to use quotation mark to display this message, and I can ask, what's your name, for example. Okay, so let's ask the name of the user. If I run this again, we're going to read in here. If I read this line, do you see here in the terminal it's appearing what's your name? Let me put here, we can see here what's your name, all right? And we can answer the user, we can say Giovanna, can answer the code, all right? So the same message that we put here in the input, it's appearing here in the terminal. I type in Giovanna, and now we have a variable name that stores the value Giovanna. And once we run it again, we're gonna print Giovanna, okay? Now, let's see the next exercise. So ask user for his name, print hello and the name of the user. So here it's going to be pretty much the same as we saw before. But instead of printing only the name, we're gonna print the name, we're gonna say hello and the name together. So how can we do this? We're gonna use the same structure that we have in here so far. Line 1, name equals to input, what's your name? But in here, we're gonna say something before name. We're gonna put a message called hello, all right, comma, space, and then we can use the plus sign to add another string. So we're gonna say here name, okay? Let's see what happens if we run and debug again. So here we're running, the user is going to ask us, what's your name? So if we run in here, what's your name? I can put here Robert, for example. Once I click enter, now we can see that Robert is the value of our variable name. And now we're gonna print hello, comma, and the value of name. So when we run, it's going to appear here, hello Robert. Okay, I know it was too fast, so I'm gonna run in here without the debugger. If I put here python problems.py, and I run here, what's your name? And I put Anna. Once we click enter, it's saying hello Anna. Okay, do you see here that there is this empty space? So this will allow us to have an empty space in here. Okay, if I remove this white space and I run it again, I put here Anna again, we're not gonna have this white space in between the comma and the name. Okay, so we can add this white space, and we can do the same in our input. Do you see the name that we're adding is right next to the question mark? So we can add a space in here as well. Here is just about styling, right? You don't need to worry about. Do you see here that we have a space now? It's because we added in here. So if I put here Bob, now it's going to say hello Bob. Okay, so this is it for this problem. Now we're gonna do something pretty similar to what we did, but instead of using this notation here, print hello plus name, we can use a comma instead, okay, if we do this way. So let's see what happens. Instead of using a plus sign, if we do here with a comma, I can say, what's your name? Charlie. And now it's gonna print hello Charlie. Now this comma, like we can see, we have two white spaces right now, because the comma will always, this notation of using comma will always give us a white space. So we can remove this white space, and we will run again. What's your name? G. it will print hello G. Okay, so you have these two options of printing strings. You can use the comma or you can use the plus sign. Okay, now in the problem 4, we're gonna see a third way of printing strings, okay, that is this F string. So I highly recommend that you open this link and we're gonna see in here. All right, so the F string provides a concise and convenient way to embed Python expressions inside string literals from formatting. So what is the main idea in here? We're going to put the F quotation mark, and what is a variable we're gonna put inside curly bracket, and what is a message we're not gonna put inside curly bracket. Okay, so let's try it out. Instead of doing this way, it will be the same exercise, but now we're gonna use the F string. So we need to use F question mark, and we want to say hello comma space, and we can add the variable in here. So we're gonna use curly bracket, name is the name of the variable, and close the curly bracket. Here the Visual Studio Code already show us that name is a variable because we didn't change the color. Do you see? What is a string, what is a message is in orange, and what is a variable is in white. Okay, so if we run again, let's run our code. If we run here python problems.py and I put here what's your name, Bob, now we're gonna print hello Bob. Okay, so this is a third option to print strings with variables. All right, now let's go to the next exercise. So now on problem 5, what are we gonna do? Create a variable a and store the value 5. Create a variable b and store the value of a. Change the value of a to 10. Print the variable a and b. So here the idea is to show you how can we manipulate variables, all right, and how it changes or not depending on the case. Okay, so let's do exactly what is written in here. So we're gonna do a equals to 5. Then create a variable b and store the value of a, so we can do b equals to a. All right, when we do b equals to a, what are we saying? The variable b will be equals to the value of a. All right, we're gonna see this, and then we're gonna say a equals to 10, and in the end we're gonna print a and we're gonna print. Okay, so let's use the debugger to help us in here. I'm gonna put the breakpoint on the first line and run and debug. So what are we doing on line 1? We're saying a is equals to 5. So when we click here, step over, we're gonna see that a is equals to 5, all right? The next line, we're saying b is equals to a. So what is the value of a? The value of a is 5. So what are we gonna do? b will be equals to the value of a. So b will be equals to 5. And we can see in here, b is equals to 5, all right? Then, what are we saying on line 3? We're saying that a is equals to 10. So we are assigning a new value for the variable a. So in this case, we're only gonna change the value of a. We won't change the value of b. Okay, so our a now will be equals to 10, like we can see here in the debugger. All right, and the value of b remains the value 5. And why is that? Because in here, in programming, we normally run our code reading from top to bottom. So since we assign that b is equals to a before we change the value of a, the value of b do not change. All right, so it remains 5. And here we can see that when we print a, it's 10, like we can see in the debugger, and when we print b, it will be 5 because it's what is in the debugger. Okay, and we can do multiple ways in here in this code. For example, if I want to do b equals to a times 2, what are we gonna see? Let's see this little change in here. So again, we are assigning that a is equals to 5. Okay, so our variable a will be equals to 5. Then we are saying that b is equals to a, so b will be equals to the value of a, that is 5. So here b is equals to 5, okay? Now we are just changing the value of a because we're saying a equals to 10. So our a will change the value to 10. And now what are we gonna do? We wanna change the value of b to a times 2. So what is a times 2? The current value of a is 10. 10 times 2 is 20. So our variable b will be 20. Okay, like we can see in the debugger. And if we print, we're gonna see that a is equals to 10 and b equals to 20. All right? I hope this clarify a little bit how it is to manipulate variables. Okay? From now on, we're going to start working with some methods that we're going to see in CS50 problem sets. All right? So we're going to use some resources in W3 Schools. It's a really good resource. If I were you, I bookmark this page and search all the functions whenever you're coding. Okay? And you can also see in here that we have a hyperlink saying click here. So you can take a look at the explanation of each function. Okay? So let's start problem 6. In this case, we want to ask for a title of a movie. Convert the first letters in every word of the title of the movie in uppercase. Print it. So let's see here. I'm going to remove to create the next exercise. So let's see how this title function works. So basically, this is W3 Schools, all right? So basically, the title make the first letter in each word uppercase. So let's see the definition. The title method returns a string where the first character in every word is uppercase, like a header or a title. If the words contain a number or a symbol, the first letter after that will be converted in uppercase. So let's see this example in the try it yourself. We have a variable that stores the value welcome to my word. And we're doing the next line, x equals to txt, that is the variable with the message, dot title, and then we're printing. Here in the left side in this blackboard, we can see that now the message is saying welcome to my word with all the first letters in uppercase, all right? So this title in here converted the T, M, and W into uppercase, okay? And this is exactly what we're gonna do. So first, we're gonna ask the user for a movie. So here we're gonna create a variable, for example, called movie, and we're gonna use the input function to ask the user for something. So I'm gonna say here, title of a movie, for example. We can ask the user for this. Then I'm gonna create another variable, okay? I'm gonna say here like x, for example, equals to movie, and we're gonna use this title method. Like we can see in here, we have to say the name of the variable dot and the dot title. That is the method that we wanna use. So movies dot title, okay? And then we can print here x. Let's use the debugger and check what's going on. So if I run here and debug, we're going to check that, let's see. In the first line, we have here movies equals to input title of a movie. So when we run in here, we're gonna ask the user for a movie. For example, I'm gonna put here Wall-E, that it's a movie that I like. Once I click enter, then variable movie is storing the value Wall-E, okay? Now the x function, the x variable, will store the result of this method. So we're gonna get the variable Wall-E, okay, the variable movie that stores Wall-E, and we're gonna convert this into a title way, okay? So when we run this in here, we're gonna see that x is using capital W and capital E, okay? Like we said, all the first letters is going to appear with in uppercase, okay? And once we print, now it's going to appear Wall-E, all capital. And we can play around. For example, I can put here, let's run again. And if I run here, for example, Star Wars. And notice that I'm putting everything in lowercase. But when I click enter, the variable movie is Star Wars, all lower. And when we use this title method, it will convert with capital S and capital W, okay? And this is exactly what we're gonna print. So basically the movie.title will do this, will convert all the first letters into uppercase, okay? Now let's see the next one. So in the problem 7, we're gonna do the following. Ask user for a title of a movie again, convert every word of the title of the movie in uppercase, print it. So in here it will be pretty similar to problem 6, but instead of all the first letters in capital, we're gonna convert everything in uppercase, okay? So I'm gonna create a variable called movies, and again here you can call any name you want, okay? And I'm gonna use here the input function. Okay, remember that the input function get the whatever the user type in the terminal, okay? And I'm gonna ask what's your favorite movie, for example. Okay, then after doing this, let me expand a little bit in this part. oops. Then after doing this, we're going to convert our input, the whatever the user typed in all uppercase. Okay, and how are we gonna do this? Again, let's take a look at W3 schools. Here we have the upper method. So the definition is the upper method returns a string where all characters are in uppercase. Symbols and numbers are ignored. So let's see this example here that they gave to us. So in here we have a variable called txt and we have the string saying hello my friends, only with capital H. And then we're creating a variable x, and in this variable x we're going to store the value of the variable txt converted in all uppercase. Okay, and then we're printing this variable x. Like we can see here in the blackboard, we can see that the phrase hello my friends is now in all uppercase. So this is what the upper does, all right? And this is exactly what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna create a variable x, for example, and we're gonna say the name of the variable we wanna convert in all upper, and we're gonna use this upper method. So we do dot upper, and then I'm gonna print x, okay? So let's run and debug. Actually, let me stop in here. Let me stop the debug in here and let's run it again. Run and debug. So let's understand what's going on inside of our code. Here we have movies equals to input what's your favorite movie. So once we click in this button, we're gonna ask the user for his favorite movie. In this case, I'm gonna put like Star Wars, okay? Once I click enter, we're gonna see here in the debugger that the variable movies here now stores the value Star Wars. This is exactly what I sent here in the terminal, okay? After this line, we're gonna see that we're gonna build a variable called x. Okay, here we have a variable called x, and this variable x stores the value Star Wars all uppercase. Okay, so when we print, we're gonna print the variable all in uppercase. I'm gonna run here regularly so we can clearly see what's going on. So Star Wars, once I click enter, here we're seeing all uppercase. Okay, this is it for this problem. Now let's go to problem 8. Ask the user for a title of a movie, convert every word of the title in lowercase and print it. So in here we're gonna do something different. Okay, here we're gonna use the lower function. So basically we can see in here that the lower method returns a string where all characters are lowercase. So here it's exactly the other way around of the uppercase. Okay, so in here again we have a variable called txt, hello my friends, x equal, we're creating a variable called x that will store the variable txt but now converted in all lowercase. And when we print, we can see here in the blackboard that we have hello my friends all in lower. Okay, we can also understand the lower method by this animation. Let's see. Basically, if we have a variable x equals to hello all capital and we want to print this variable all in lowercase, we can do x.lower parentheses and the result will be hello all lower. All right, so now that we have a better understanding on this, let's start applying. So we're gonna change only in here because we're gonna still ask the user for a movie. Okay, so we're gonna leave the line 1, and now we want to convert this in lower, so I'm gonna change this upper to lower. Okay, and it will make the variable the way we want. So let's run with the debugger. If I run in here, run and debug, let's see what is going on. So here we're gonna ask the user for a movie, and we can see here in the terminal. All right, and now I'm gonna write Star Wars all in uppercase. Okay, once I click enter, now we have here a variable called Star Wars in uppercase everything. Okay, and what we're doing on line 2, we're creating a variable x that will store the variable movies but now converted in lowercase because this is what the lower method does. So once we click here step over, we can see that we have now the variable x and it's Star Wars all in lowercase. Okay, and when we print, we're gonna print exactly this. So let me run again this way. If I put Star Wars, now it's returning to us, is giving us Star Wars in lowercase. Okay, so this is it for our code. Now let's see problem 9. Create a variable that holds the value hi everyone with white space before and after, remove the white space and print it. So to do this part, let's do step by step. So let me clear all my terminal. And now we're going to create a variable. So I'm going to create a variable called var, for example, and I'm going to start this message here that we have in the PDF. So I'm going to do Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. Okay? Since we're doing Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V in the PDF, we need to change the quotation mark in here. Okay? But we can see that we have empty space. I'm going to also give more empty space in here. We can see by these dots. All right? Now, how can we remove the white space? So let's see this animation about the strip method. So the strip method removes any leading spaces at the beginning and trailing spaces at the end characters. Space is the default leading character to remove. So like we saw in the animation, we're going to use this strip method to remove the empty spaces, all right? So I'm gonna create here a variable called x, and I'm gonna use this strip method. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna say var, that is the name of the variable we wanna change, and we're gonna use this strip method. And in here, we're just gonna put an empty, we're just gonna open and close bracket. Because if we do this way, the method already understands that we're gonna remove the white space, okay? And in the end, we're gonna print x. So let's see what happens. If we run here with the debugger, we have here in our code, we have here, right now we have nothing, but once we click in here, we're gonna create a variable called var, and we have hi everyone with empty spaces, okay? Then our variable x, now we're gonna create a variable x that will be the same thing as our var variable, but without white spaces because we're using the strip method. And when we click in here, we can see that now our variable x does not contain this white space before and after, okay? And this will be exactly what we're gonna print, hi everyone, okay? Let's see again now running regularly. So if I do here python problems.py, it's going to appear hi everyone without the empty spaces, okay? We can continue doing the same for this other case. For the problem 10, we can use the strip method for other cases. So let's see in here. Create a variable that holds the value, a lot of commas, RR, TT, HH, some dots, the word coding inside, some dots in the end, and RRR, okay? Then remove the extra characters and print only coding. So here the idea will be pretty much the same. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this variable in here. You can copy this variable from the PDF, and I'm gonna paste in here. This will be the value that I wanna assign. So now we have a var with a lot of commas, RRR, TTT, HHH, dots, coding, dots, RRR, okay? And in here we're gonna use the strip method again, but we're gonna specify what are the characters we wanna remove, okay? So in this case, we just want to let the word coding. So what are we going to do? Inside the parentheses, we're going to put quotation mark, and we're going to put all the characters we want to remove. So we want to remove comma, R, T, H, and the dot. These are the extra characters that we have to remove to only have coding in our variable. And then we're going to print X. Okay? So let's run and debug. Let's wait a second. And like we can see in here, we are creating this variable. So once we click step over now, we can see this variable here, var blah blah blah, okay? Now the x variable will be the resulting variable once we remove all the commas, r, t, h, and dot. So let's see what happens. If we do this, our variable x now only contains the word coding, and this is exactly what we want for this problem, okay? And in the end, we're gonna print X, so we're gonna see in the terminal the word coding. Okay, I'm just gonna run again without the debugger so you can check what is going on. So when I run, now we're just printing coding, and this is exactly what we want. All right, now let's go to problem 11. So here, create a variable that holds the value I love coding, replace the word coding by Python and print it. So in this case, we're gonna use, like we can see here in the hint, see how replace method works. Okay, basically we know that we're gonna use replace, but we're gonna understand it in a bit. Before everything, let's do what they are asking us to do. Create a variable that holds the value I love coding. So I'm gonna create a variable called message, for example, and I'm gonna put the message here, I love coding. Okay? Now we need to replace the word coding by Python. So how can we do this? Let's see this animation. The replace method replaces a specified phrase with another specified phrase. If we will have a variable txt equals to I like bananas and we want to change bananas to apple, we can use the replace method to make this change for us. We can do txt.replace and inside the parentheses we put the word that we want to change, in our case bananas, with the new word that we want to replace, in our case apples. And our string txt will become I like apples. So basically what we're gonna do in here, we're gonna use the replace method like we saw how it works, and we're gonna say what is the word we want to change to the new word that we want to replace. Okay, so here we're gonna replace with the word Python. So basically here I'm gonna create a variable called x, again you can give any name, and in this variable x I'm gonna store this replacement. All right, so what is the variable we want to do this change? Is the msg, okay, dot, and now we're gonna use replace, and inside the parentheses first we're gonna say what is the previous word, and then we're gonna say what is the new word that we want to add. So here I'm gonna put coding, this is the word that I want to remove, and I want to replace with the word Python, okay? And in the end I want to print the variable x. So let's see what is going on here if we run with the debugger. So in here, if we wait a second, we can see that once we click in this part, we're gonna see the variable msg I love coding, okay? And now once we click in this button again, we're gonna see that we replace the word coding with Python, all right? And we can see in here I love Python, okay? And in the end we're gonna print x like we can see in here. Now I'm gonna run again to check if everything is working fine. So in the beginning my variable was I love coding, and now it's I love Python, okay? So now we're going to ask, from now on we were working with strings, right? Now we're going to start working with numbers, okay? So let me remove everything we have in here. On problem 12 we want to ask user for two integers, sum them and print the result. Okay, so here it will be pretty similar to what we were doing before. First I'm going to create a variable a, and I'm going to store the result, the value that the user will give to me. So I'm going to say give me like number, I'm going to ask one number, okay? And then I'm going to create another variable to ask another number. All right, then we need to sum them and print the result. So I'm gonna create a new variable that I'm gonna call sum, and I'm gonna do a plus b, and in the end we're gonna print sum. Okay, so let's see what is going on in here. Here we can work with regular, here it's pure math. You can sum, you can subtract, you can multiply, divide, okay? So let's see what is going on in here. I'm gonna ask the user for, in the line 1, we're gonna ask the user for a number, okay? So when I run in here, we're going to be asked, and I'm gonna put the number 4, for example, the number 1, for example. And in here, we're gonna have a equals to 1, and notice that here we have the number 1 in quotation mark, okay? And now we're gonna ask the user for a number for the letter b. So here I'm gonna put 2, for example. And like we can see here, a has number 1 and b has number 2, okay? Now in our sum variable, we're expecting to do the sum. So we're expecting to have a plus b. So a is 1 plus 2, that is b. We're expecting to have the number 3, right? But when we run in here, we're gonna see that sum is 12. But we know by math that 1 plus 2 should be 3. Right? So what is going on in here? When we use the plus sign, actually when we are working with the input function, this input function here, it will store whatever the user type in a string, okay? And our code will manipulate this variable like it is a string, not a number that we're expecting to receive. Okay, so how can we work with numbers and not strings in this case? We need to convert our variable a and our variable b into numbers. all right? In this case, into integers. That is what they asked in problem 12. So how are we gonna do this? Let me just print here, we're going to receive 12. So to convert this, we're gonna say the word int before the variable we're gonna put the word int, and inside the parentheses, we're gonna put the variable we wanna convert. Okay, and here the same, we want to convert the variable b into an integer, so we say int, and inside the parentheses the variable that we want to convert. Okay, so when we say int before the variable, this means that we want to convert the type of a variable. So our variable I will not be a string anymore, and it will be a number. And how can we check this? Let's see. Like I said previously, remember that the variable a was is inside of a quotation mark. Okay, so for example, if I put here the number 1, then here our variable a is inside of a quotation mark number 1. Okay, and if then I'm gonna ask for the number 2, all right? So here b is equals to 2. And when we do the sum, now that we converted the variable a and the variable b into integers, our result is a number. Can you see here that sum does not contain the quotation mark in between, around the number 3? So this means that the number 3 is exactly an integer. It's not a string anymore. That's why we need to convert in here on line 3 the variable a and variable b into an integers. Otherwise, we won't calculate the real number that we would get in math. Okay, so now 1 plus 2 is giving us 3, so now this is correct, and we can print the number 3. All right, let's run this again. For example, if I put here 7 and I put here the number 3, now we're receiving 10. That is the sum of 7 plus 3. Okay, now we're going to problem 13. So ask the user for 2 float numbers, sum them and print the result. So here something is important to understand. What is a float number? So basically a float number is any number that contains decimal places. An integer does not contain decimal places, but a float contains. Okay? So in this case, instead of getting an integer, we're expected to receive a float. Alright, so any number that contains decimal places. So let's start working in here. Like I said previously, here the input function will give us a string. So we need to convert this into a float. So the idea here is exactly the same. Instead of saying int before, we're gonna say float, and in here we're gonna say float again. Okay? So let's run our code, run and debug. Here it's going to ask us for a number. So I'm gonna put here, for example, the variable a. Let's give the number 2.5. Okay? Here we have 1 decimal place. And then we can see here the variable a is 2.5, and when we run again, now we're getting the number for the variable b. I'm going to put 5.0, for example, or only 5. That's fine, 5. And here we can see that our variable b is 5. Okay. Now our sum, we are going to convert the variable a and b into floats, and we're going to sum them. So we're going to do 2.5 plus 5. That is 7.5, like we can see in here. The sum is 7.5, okay? And this will be exactly what we're gonna print. All right? Let me run again and we can see other cases. So for example, if I run in here 0.1 and I put here 1.1, we're gonna receive 1.2 and a lot of numbers, okay? This part in here of the how to manipulate how many decimal places we want, we're gonna see in the future, but right now it's working like we can see. Now the next problem, problem 14. Ask user for 2 integers, subtract them and print the result. So here it's telling us to get 2 integers, so I'm gonna change this float to an integer again, okay, because we want to make integers, and we want to subtract them. So we can do, instead of int I plus int b, we're gonna do int I minus int b, okay? And I'm gonna change the variable here to result, okay? So when we run it again in the debugger, we are gonna give a number. Let's wait a little bit for the debugger. So like we can see in the debugger, we have the variable a, and we're gonna ask for a number. Here I'm gonna give the number 5, for example, and then in the variable a we have number 5. Here we're gonna ask a number for the variable b. I'm gonna give the number 2. Now we have a equals to 5 and b equals to 2. and we're gonna do 5 minus 2, and in this case our result variable will be equals to 3, the number 3, an integer 3. Okay, and this is exactly what we're gonna print. If we do another testing running without the debugger, if I put here 7 and 1, we're gonna receive the number 6. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Ask user for 2 integers, multiply them and print the result. So in this case, it's exactly the same problem we were doing before, but instead of subtracting, we want to multiply. So to multiply in coding, we use a star, all right? So let's try it out. If we run the debugger again, run and debug, let's wait a second. And here, if I run, for the variable a, I'm gonna give the number 5 again, and here we can see a equals to 5. For the variable b, I'm gonna put here 2 for 10. Let's say 10, and here we can see the variable b. We have the value 10, and the result will be 5 times 10 because we're converting them into integers. And we have here result equals to 50, okay? So we're doing 5 times 10, exactly what we're expecting in math. All right, so it's working. Let's run again one more time. So if I put here 2 and 3, we're expecting to see here the number 6, okay? Now again, ask the user for 2 integers, divide them and print the result. So in programming, we have 2 ways of dividing things. We can divide using one only slash, okay, or double slashes. Let's see the difference. If we use a single slash, I'm gonna create another variable called result2 with 2 slashes, okay, so we can see the difference. And I'm gonna print here with result2. So here we're gonna see 2 ways of dividing, and you're gonna notice what is the big difference, okay? So let's run with the debugger. Run and debug, let's wait a second, and we can see what's going on. So here, let's give a number for the variable a. So I'm gonna put here, for example, 10, okay? And for the variable b, we're gonna ask again, and I'm gonna put here the number 2, for example, okay? So far, our variable a has the value 10 and the variable b has the value 2. So in this first division that we're using only one slash, we're gonna divide 10 by 2, okay? And when we do this, let's see what's going on. Our result value, it's a float, okay? Do you see here that we have 1 decimal point place? So this means that when we divide with only one slash, it will return to us a float. And when we use 2 slashes, like we can see in here, it returns us an integer, okay? So this is the 2 ways that you can divide in programming. Then this is the main difference. If you use only one slash, you're gonna see the result with a decimal place, it will be a float. And if you divide using 2 forward slashes, it will return you an integer. Like we can see here, it's only number 5 without decimal points, okay? And we're gonna print these values, all right? If I run in here again, for example, 100 times 50, it will give us 2.0 because we're dividing by 1 slash, and 2 because we're dividing with 2 slashes, okay? So now let's go to the next part that we're gonna still working with division. So now let's see problem 17. Ask user for 2 numbers, divide them and print the result with no decimal places, okay? So here we already saw how we can do using the division with 2 slashes, okay? So I'm gonna remove this. Now we're gonna work with this round. Do you see? Hint, see how round method works. So basically we have round in Python, and the round function returns a floating point number that is a rounded version of the specified number with the specified number of decimals. The default number of decimals is 0, meaning that the function will return the nearest integer. Okay, so let's see in this case, let's try it ourselves. So we have a variable called x, and we want to round 5.76543, and we just want 2 decimal places. So when we see here in the blackboard, we can see that the number is rounded, but with only 2 decimal places. So instead of having 5 like it had previously, right now we have 5.77. okay? And we're gonna do this in our code, okay? So what are we gonna do? We're gonna get the result. So I'm gonna say result round, and I'm creating a new variable, and we're gonna use the round function. So you're gonna do round, okay? And we're gonna use the variable result. In here, we don't want any decimal places, so we're not gonna put any other number. And I wanna print result round. So let's see how round works. Let's run the debugger and check what is going on in here. So basically, we're gonna ask the user for a number. Let's give a number, for example, 5, okay? And in here, so A is storing the value 5, and for B, I'm gonna give the number 2, all right? So here we have A equals to 5 and B equals to 2. The result will be the division of it, so our result value will be 2.5, okay? But we don't want to print 2.5. We want a number with no decimal places. So here we're gonna see, after we use the round, that our result rounded variable will be our result with no decimal places. So here we have the number 2, okay? And in here we're gonna print the number 2, like we were expecting. So let's run it again. For example, if I put here the number 1 and I put here the number 3, we're expecting to have the number 0.33333 infinite 3. But when we run, we're gonna receive only the number 0 because we are rounding the number, and in this case, we don't have any decimal places. Okay, this is the question in here. And there is another way of setting how many decimal places we want, okay? We can use round or we can use something else, and we're gonna see. So now let's work with problem 18. Ask user for 2 numbers, divide them, and print the result with only 2 decimal places. Here is written multiply them, but I already changed the ebook and it will be divide them, okay? So it will be exactly the same problem, but instead of getting only with no decimal places, we want 2. So we can use the round function here and we can put the number 2, okay? Let's run and debug and see what's going on. So for example, if I do in here, let's give a number for the value variable A. So if I do this in here 1, and now let's give a number for value B, that is number 3. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna do 1 divided by 3, okay? And our result will be 0.333 infinite, okay? Now what are we doing on line 4? We want to round this number in where we only contains 2 decimal places. So when we do this, we're gonna check that our result rounded, this variable, it has now 2 only decimal places, okay? And this is exactly what we want. So we can do this using round, okay? And if I run in here, we can do exactly the same. 1, 3, it will give us 0.33, only 2 decimal places. But there is another way of doing this, okay? And in this way, we don't need to use this line 4. I prefer using round, but it's important to see other things that you can do. This is something that I searched on Stack Overflow, okay? This is a question, how to limit floats to 2 decimal places. And you see here that is highlighted. We can use this thing, this notation in our print to print only 2 format, only 2 decimal places. So if you see, this is the original number, and when we use this format, it is giving us only 2 decimal places, okay? So let's apply this in here. We're gonna print, we're gonna put this notation, and it's not our variable A that we wanna format. We wanna format our variable result, okay? And in here would be exactly the same. So if we run the debugger, we can barely see what is going on because the format will appear in the terminal. So I'm not gonna use the debugger in this case. Okay, let's understand what is going on in here if we run without the debugger. So in here I'm gonna put 1, I'm gonna run the code, and if I put the number 1 and the number 3, now it's giving us 0.33. So here we're telling that we want only 2 decimal places, all right? And we want to format with only 2 decimal places this variable. If we want, for example, 5 decimal places, we can do this just changing the number inside the quotation mark. So if I put here 1 divided by 3, it will give us 5 decimal places, okay? This notation is a little bit complicated. I prefer using round, but it's important that you can see this other way. All right, so this is it for the essential problems to finally understand a variable. If you have any questions, send us. All right, we're here to help you. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.